Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this pay webinar by the EIS this afternoon. We really appreciate you all coming after a hard day at school, and we're going to start by introducing ourselves from the panel. My name's Heather Hughes. I'm the National President this year of the EIS. I'm also a Local Association Secretary and a member of the Salaries Committee, as well as being on the SNCT Teachers Panel and a full member of the SNCT. I'm going to introduce you first of all to Andreen and then to Des. Andreen.
Hi there, my name is Andreen Bamford and I'm this year's Vice President. I'm also a Local Association Secretary for Eastern Bartonshire. I'm also a member of Salaries Committee and SNCT as well. Good to see you all.
Des.
Thanks, Heather. Afternoon, everyone. I'm Des Morris. I'm EIS Salaries Convener and also Local Association Secretary for East Renfrewshire.
Thanks, Andreen and Des. So you've submitted a large number of questions to us, so thanks for doing that. We've collated these questions and we're going to read them out through this webinar. Now, you might not see your exact question, but we're trying to answer all the questions that we have been asked. You can put some questions in the chat, and if we don't get round to answering them during the webinar, we will answer them afterwards privately to you. Although this is a private meeting of the EIS, we really want this information to get out there, and we're very happy for you to tweet. Our tweet is #EIS_VoteReject. I'm going to hand you over to Des now, who's our Salaries Convener, and he's going to give you an overview of the negotiations and the revised pay offer that we're asking you to reject. Des, thank you.
Thanks, Heather, and again, afternoon to everyone, and thanks for coming today. I just want to briefly kind of run through how we've got to where we're at the present time. Our pay claim, the teacher side pay claim, was lodged on the 18th of December 2020 and should have been paid in April of last year, April 2021. And as you'll be aware, the pay claim was for a settlement between 3 and 5%. Just to be clear, the teacher side includes ourselves and all the other teacher unions, and that pay claim was agreed jointly at the side. Pay is negotiated through the SNCT, Scottish Negotiating Committee for Teachers, and that's a tripartite body, teacher side, COSLA representing the employers, local government and Scottish Government. But just to be clear, the pay offer is made by COSLA alone as the organisation representing our employers, the 32 local authorities. And COSLA leaders are required to meet consider pay. Now, COSLA met on the following submission of our pay claim. COSLA leaders met in February and in March, and an offer was made on the 15th of March. And that offer was for a 2% rise for those earning up to £40,000 a year, and a 1% rise for those earning over £40,000 a year, with a cap of £800. Now, what that offer would have translated to would have been 25% of Scottish teachers getting a 2% rise, and 75% of all teachers, including everyone at the top of the main grade unpromoted scale, and every promoted teacher getting 1%. Now, the SNCT Extended Joint Chairs is the name of the SNCT negotiating group, and at that group are ourselves, COSLA and Scottish Government. And we met with them on the 17th of March, and the teacher side formally rejected that offer. Now, the reasons for rejection of that offer, and indeed the subsequent offers, have really not changed, apart from one respect. That offer was rejected on the basis that it was a sub-inflationary offer for the vast majority of teachers, and also on the basis that it failed to recognise the contribution and workload of all teachers in maintaining education during the pandemic. The offer also put teachers' pay again into reverse following our 2018 pay deal, and crucially as well, it differentiated amongst different grades of teachers, something that the EIS and all members of the teacher side is fundamentally opposed to. What happened next was then the Scottish parliamentary elections intervened, We met with employers again at the end of March and in May and in June, but no new offers were made. Right at the end of June, COSLA did offer to make the same offer to all teachers, but basically used the same amount of money but spread it more thinly, so that everyone, all teachers, would get the same pay rise, but that would be a 1.22% pay rise. Now, inflation at that point was running at 2.5%. This offer was rejected, and on the 30th of September, we declared a dispute over pay at a full meeting of the SNCT. We declared the dispute as a result of the delay in an improved offer being made, with inflation at that point then running at 3.1%. Fast forward, and on the 4th of November, a new offer was made. This offer just repeated the 1.22% from March, but included an unconsolidated backdating of that to January. So what that amounted to was the 1.22% plus an additional one-off payment of around, for example, £95 net take home for a teacher at the top of the main grade scale, which would equate to roughly about £7.50 a week for each of the weeks from January to March of last year. Now, the teacher side unanimously rejected that on the 12th of November, basically for the same reasons as before, aside from the differentiated element, which COSLA now accepted. And we emphasised at that point the urgent need for an improved and reasonable pay offer. Now, on the 13th of December, a revised offer was made, and that's the offer we have on the table just now. And on the 16th of December, Salaries Committee of the EIS unanimously rejected this offer for the same reasons as before, but did decide to put it to members in the current ballot with a recommendation to reject. Now, as you'll know, the current offer is a 1% increase from April 2021, with a further 1% increase from January 2022, again with the £800 cap, plus a one-off payment of £100 to every teacher in Scotland. Now, it's this offer that we're balloting on and recommending that members reject. In terms of take-home pay, to take, for instance, a main grade teacher at the top of the unpromoted scale, a 1% increase would currently, without any increase in national insurance, that would equate to a net take-home pay increase of about £20 a month, or £5 a week. However, another consideration is the national insurance hike, which happens in April 2022, which will, of course, further erode take-home pay. Now, just to be clear, Salaries Committee thinks that this offer fundamentally undervalues and seriously misjudges the contribution of teachers during the current pandemic, and indeed going forward as we attempt to recover from it. The committee is of the view that while Scottish Government has been eager to praise the huge efforts of teachers as frontline workers in maintaining continuity of education during the pandemic, and what's undoubtedly been the most challenging circumstances any of us can remember, this praise is not reflected in what Scottish Government and COSLA think they should be paid. In fact, a significant real terms pay cut would seem to be what we deserve. Now, we do not begrudge other public sector workers their pay increases. You'll probably be aware that in May 2021, an NHS pay deal offering an average increase of 4% was implemented for over 150,000 NHS workers. And this increase covered 16 months, having been backdated 1st December 2020, in recognition of what was termed an exceptional year of significant pressure for staff. And this came on top of a £500 thank you payment for health and social care workers. In August of last year, the Scottish Government announced a 3% uplift for all NHS medical and dental staff, which includes GPs and dentists, backdated to April 21, in recognition of their efforts during the pandemic. The Health Secretary at the time announced the pay award was in recognition of an exceptional year for all NHS workers and reflected the immense value placed on the continued hard work and dedication of medical and dental staff. Now, as I say, we welcome increases in pay for our public sector colleagues in the NHS because no one doubts the efforts of and pressures on them. But the Salaries Committee firmly believes that this has been an exceptional year of significant pressure for our members too, and that the current offer does not reflect the immense value placed on the continued hard work and dedication of our members. Just to finish on this wee summary, just to kind of tie it up a wee bit, just to point out that MSPs are due to receive a 3.4 pay increase in April 2022, and that in the latest figures released yesterday, inflation is now currently running, CPI is now currently running at 5.4%. So that's the background, colleagues, to where we are. I'll leave it there for now, Heather, but I know there will be questions which I'll be more than happy to answer. Thanks.
Thanks for that very comprehensive overview, Des. And yes, we've got a lot of questions to get through today. So the first one for you to answer, Des, is around the time that it's taken to get this revised offer. So the question is, why has it taken so long to get this offer, and why has progress been so slow?
Okay, thanks, Heather. So just to reiterate, our pay claim was submitted in December 2020, and the first offer was not made until mid-March, with revised offers in November and December. Now, I've had a wee count back, checked my diary, and we have had 8 negotiating meetings since March. Our pay increase should have been in our pockets almost 10 months ago, and a reminder to everybody that we have still to submit a pay claim for the coming year. Now, throughout this, we have continually criticised the delay on the part of the employers to make a reasonable offer, and on occasions have expected offers to be made following meetings of causal leaders, offers which often haven't materialised, however, immediately thereafter. There have been other factors as well, however. The UK budget was late last year for a variety of reasons, most notably COVID. That meant that the Scottish budget was later than normal, which in turn meant that the local government grant settlement announcement was also late. There was also the Scottish parliamentary election on 6th May. Now, the pre-election purdah period started on 25th March, and that effectively closed down negotiating processes. In addition, COSLA leaders were seeking meetings with Scottish Government ministers to explore additional funding. Another factor was following the 6th of May election, the new Scottish Government cabinet appointments weren't confirmed until the end of May. And we also have the internal COSLA mechanism whereby meetings of leaders need to take place to consider any revised offers. So there's a whole mixture of things there. But that said, the point I would make is elections and budgets are a fact of life and both necessary and predictable events, which shouldn't prevent our members getting a decent pay rise on time each year where there's an election. And we potentially face a similar problem in the coming year with local government elections happening in May. And we consider that it is just not acceptable. And that's why we've raised in negotiations the possibility of making August, when teachers go back to school, the pay settlement date each year, instead of members having to hang on in this kind of pay limbo until either COSLA or Scottish Government get organised post-elections. I hope that answers that question, Heather.
It answers it very comprehensively. Thanks, Des. So I'm going to come to Andreen for the first part of this next question. And it says, why has the Salaries Committee recommended rejection of this offer? And what would be the level of offer that would be acceptable? Thanks, Andreen.
Thanks, Heather. Well, so Des has actually covered most of this in his opening his opening presentation, but just to reiterate, because I think the points are important. First of all, 1.22% is a real terms pay cut. Given the current levels of inflation and the fact that the consumer price index rose by 5.1% in the 12 months before November 2021, it's not good enough. So the whole point of a pay rise, the whole point of us putting in a pay rise claim every year is so that our wages can rise in line with inflation. You know, our restorative pay campaign a few years ago was just about that. I was addressing the fact that for years we had sub-inflationary pay rises, which had left us so far behind. We cannot afford to accept 1.22%, which is a pay cut. The cost of living is rising. We're facing a cost of living crisis as we move into 2022. Inflation and interest is on the rise, and for all of that, it's important that we reject this. But we cannot underestimate the amazing effort that's been put in by teachers during the pandemic, and the effort that's still going on in schools. Education recovery, that sits firmly with teachers, so a pay rise to reflect that is fair and reasonable. It's now the current offer, which is now 10 months overdue, fails to recognise or reward the efforts that teachers have made to keep education going during this pandemic. So that's why we must reject this offer from COSLA and prompt Scottish Government to offer us more.
Thanks, Andreen. And Des, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, thanks, Heather. I mean, just as Andreen's pointed out, and just to reiterate that the offer that's currently on the table is sub-inflationary. It puts teachers' pay into reverse, and it fundamentally doesn't recognise that we have been frontline workers throughout the pandemic, going into busy, crowded schools to ensure the continuity of pupils' education. And the dedication and hard work of our members is really not reflected in any way, shape or form in respect to this claim. Just in respect of what level of offer would be acceptable, what I'd say is that clearly there has to be an improvement on what's on the table currently, which is an offer I think a lot of our members probably see as quite insulting, actually. I've already referred to the figures around other frontline public sector workers, such as NHS staff, GPs, etc. And we will be shortly submitting a claim for the coming year, a year in which, as I said, MSPs are being awarded 3.4%. So essentially, in essence, at the end of the day, what we're looking for is a reasonable offer that in all the circumstances we feel that we can recommend to members going forward.
Thanks, Des. And I think you've covered all the points there. And personally, I find the offer insulting, and it absolutely does not take into account that we are critical workers and that we put ourselves on the front line when many others were working from home, including our MSPs who've awarded themselves a very nice pay rise. So on to the next question. And the next question for you, Des, is if the offer is rejected, then what next?
Okay, thanks, Heather. Well, so the ballot closes on Monday the 31st of January, and the EIS Salaries Committee meets on Thursday the 3rd of February. Now, if members do indeed reject, as we recommended they do, if they do reject the offer, we will of course take the following Salaries Committee, we will take the outcome of that ballot result to the meeting of the teachers panel, which is the very next day on the 4th of February. And just to remind everyone, that's the group where all the teacher unions are represented, ourselves of course being by far in the majority on that group. If the offer is rejected, as we hope it will be, we will communicate that to COSLA and Scottish Government, and we have a further negotiating meeting then scheduled for the 10th of February. Now, the current offer is not described as a final offer, and as I've already said, we want above all else a negotiated and agreed outcome to the pay settlement. We couldn't have made our position any clearer to COSLA and Scottish Government in negotiations, and we have made suggestions as to how settlement in fact could be reached. So we hope that COSLA and Scottish Government will respond positively and that we can move quickly to settle the coming year's pay claim as well, so as to give some certainty to our members, because this is a time when I think that our members would certainly welcome that as the year progresses, knowing that the pay increase has been settled and agreed. That said, ultimately, if there is insufficient progress, then the next ballot that EIS members may be asked to deliberate on may very well be on whether or not they're willing to take industrial action. But we firmly hope that we don't get to that point, Heather.
Thanks for that, Des. So the next question is, and again, this is for you, Des, is this likely to run into a 2-year pay award, given that we don't have the 2021 deal agreed and should now be negotiating the 2022 deal?
Okay, thanks, Heather. If members vote to reject the current offer, as we believe they should, then we will be putting in our pay claim for the coming year, as well as our formal rejection of this year's pay offer as it currently stands. Now, in terms of 2-year or multi-year deals, whether they be 2-year, 3-year, whatever, 2-year or multi-year deals are not uncommon. In fact, the majority of pay deals for Scottish teachers over the past dozen or so years have been over 2 or 3 years, including, of course, our 2018 pay agreement. We've made clear throughout negotiations that we would be willing to look at a multi-year deal. And in fact, COSLA have suggested that as a possibility as well. But the problem is that we haven't been made a multi-year offer, which might form the basis for a negotiation. So it's difficult to progress matters along that line, but it always remains a possibility. And we certainly have no objection in principle to a 2 or multi-year deal, as long as the figures add up.
Thanks, Des. So I'm going to come to Andreen first for this next question. So can we address the workload and class size issues which are still outstanding along with this pay claim?
Yeah, well, first of all, this vote is about pay. So, but we can assure you, we don't want to lose focus on pay, but we can assure you that workload and class sizes are very much still a priority of the EIS. Teachers deserve a pay rise, and so we need to do whatever we can to galvanise our members and work towards a pay settlement that and get that as early as possible. However, we are still progressing workload and class sizes through our 2020 campaign. Heather, our president, and I have very strongly put our position across on these matters to all the political parties through our bilateral meetings, including SNP, as well as other groups like Connect and NUS. And also I'd like to say thanks to all members who completed our recent survey and previous surveys, because the information that we've got from that gives us further evidence for using when we're talking to these political parties to try and put our position across. We also have evidence over previous surveys which shows us that the workload that teachers are facing isn't a phenomenon of the pandemic, but it shows patterns that reveal problems with a system that is wrong. So we will use those survey results. The EIS is already going to be emailing those results to MSPs and to officers in each local authority. But our strategy sub will meet very soon to discuss ways in which we as the EIS can continue to use those results to really further this campaign. So I can assure you we are not losing sight of it. It's still very much a focus for us. But for this webinar and for the ballot that is out, this is about pay, and we know that teachers, we owe it to our teachers. Teachers deserve a pay settlement, and a pay settlement done quickly.
Thanks, Andreen. And you mentioned there our 2020 campaign and how we're not tying this at all with the pay campaign. It's completely separate. But just to reassure our members that that is still very much foremost in our minds. And as Andreen said, that we campaign for this at all levels, including with our MSPs, both in government and in opposition, and local association councils and parent groups and anyone else. I want to say a little bit about reduction in the class contact time. As you know, that the SNP had that included in their manifesto, and that's a pledge that they have made to us to cut the contact time from 22.5 hours to 21 hours. We are continually pushing them for a timescale on that. That has so far not been forthcoming, but it is something that the EIS will continue to push for because it's very important to us. We cannot be compared with our neighbours in the OECD countries when we are working far longer than they are and we have far larger classes than they are. So we are campaigning on that, but we will absolutely not trade any of our conditions of service for any pay rise. Please be assured of that. Des, is there anything else you wanted to add on that, or are we ready to go on to the next question?
No, I wouldn't add anything to that.
Okay, thanks for that. So the next question is looking around next steps and what will happen when hopefully we unanimously reject this offer. What's the union prepared to ask the membership to do to get the pay that we deserve?
I'll come in there, Heather. I mean, I think as I've kind of pointed out already this evening, above all else, people should be in absolutely no doubt that above all else, we want a negotiated settlement, an agreed settlement, and the period of stability thereafter and calm in education as we emerge from the pandemic. Our members want certainty. They want to be reassured that their efforts are being recognised. And as I say, we desire and want a negotiated and agreed settlement. Now, the best way to ensure this is we believe for members to overwhelmingly reject the current offer that's on the table, and as many members as possible to do that as possible, because the larger the turnout, then the greater pressure that we will be able to exert on behalf of our members to secure them a reasonable pay offer. Now, that said, as I've said, if there is insufficient progress in pay, then our next ballot may be on whether or not the membership is willing to take industrial action. But as I've reiterated, as I've said already, we really do hope that it does not come to that and that we can get swift and satisfactory resolution to not only the current pay claim, but also the pay claim for the coming year as well.
Thanks for that, Des. So we're just about halfway through this webinar, and thanks to everybody who submitted questions. If you still have questions that you don't think we've answered, please put them in the chat box and we'll get round to them. I have another question to ask, which has come in, Des, and it says that inflation is going up by, oh, it's gone off my screen, sorry. Inflation is going up by 5%. So what are we going to do about getting that kind of pay rise, and when are they going to take the job that we do seriously? Well,
it's you know, getting pay increases isn't easy, but it's necessary. So we have to be basically, if members do reject this, as we hope they do, we have to take that to our employers and Scottish Government and see what the response is. I've already cited the 4% and 3% figures in respect of the NHS. It's a negotiation. We have to get agreement. Agreement doesn't come easily, but we managed it in 2018 and secured a large pay increase for our members, which was overdue and deserved. So it was due us. So every effort will be made, and the backdrop, of course, as Nhs pointed out, the backdrop to all this is the cost of living crisis, which we are about to enter if we haven't entered already, and the increase in inflation. And if we were measuring inflation using the old system, RPI, inflation is actually nearer 7 or 8% than the CPI figure. So that's the backdrop, and everyone's aware of it. We're aware of it, the employers are aware of it, Scottish Government's aware of it as well, and that will inform our efforts to try and secure the best deal we can for our members, and one that's reasonable and recognises their efforts. So yeah, I have it in my diary every month for when the ONS announces its inflation figures, so they're not lost on me.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Des. Another question that came in was on percentage pay rises. And it says, the question said, or it was actually a comment more than a question, that percentage pay rises work out the same pay rise for all teachers. Percentage pay rises increase the difference in pay between the highest paid and the lowest paid, increasing the gap. So to answer that, our policy has been for many years for percentage increases and not to have flat rates. This is our established policy because the majority of our members are actually at the top of the main grade pay scale, and teachers will reach that point and some will go beyond that point into promoted posts. If members don't agree with that policy, then to change a policy like any other policy, they would have to bring a motion to the EIS AGM. But that is our policy, and we believe that that is the fairest policy for all our members. Another question that came in, Des, and you can maybe answer this one, is will there be back pay included in the current offer if we get an offer, another offer?
Yes, back pay would form the part, because obviously whatever's agreed hasn't been paid since March, so back pay would form. As soon as a pay settlement negotiation goes beyond the point at which it should have been paid, then back pay comes into play, and that's in fact what happened in respect to the 2018 pay deal, because it was a year after it should have been paid that was agreed, and we got the back pay accordingly. So yes, back pay, as I say, as soon as we got past March, April last year, back pay was in play and will be again.
Thanks for that, Des. There's another question, and these kind of questions are interesting to our members. That if you retire in August 22 and it becomes a multi-year deal, does that mean they don't see the increase for the year after they've retired?
That's when it's getting late. That's what I need to think about. But we'll make sure that nobody gets a raw deal out of this insofar as we can secure that.
Absolutely, and we did the same when we got our pay award in 2018, because it was basically a 2-year deal. So it was on our website what would happen in those situations. So there is, you do get money, so it is worked out for you. So another question that's come up, would a march or rally be a possibility to help show the members' feelings prior to industrial action, similar to the one we did in 2018? What does the panel feel about that? Des?
Well, I think that would be above my pay grade. I'm just a lowly salaries convener. So if that was that would have to be a decision. No, seriously, that would have to be a decision, not of salaries committee, but I think of the executive committee. So whatever my view is irrelevant, because that would have to be discussed at a full executive committee. But I understand why the question is asked.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I think that march and rally we did in October 2018 was the clincher of our deal, although it was we mustn't forget that we had a long campaign, our 10 for 10, if you remember. So that was kind of the crescendo of a long campaign that we built up steadily and got our membership on board. So this would be a marathon rather than a sprint, because we need everybody on board to get a resounding reject this, we deserve more, but absolutely that is something I'm sure that Salaries Committee could consider, and then we'd have to put that to executive after that, because that's the way it works. Andreen, do you want to add any further comments at all about anything that we've covered tonight, or something you think that our membership still needs to know?
Yeah. I just want to remind people that way back in 2017-18, when we were considering our 10% campaign, nobody thought we could get it. No, people thought 10% was a pipe dream, but we got it. We got it in the end, and we got it because we were able to really harness members, you know, real disgust at the way they had been treated by the government, and use that and get people get people voting, get people marching, yes, but get people voting. We got that. We won that campaign without having to resort to industrial action. I think it's important that people remember that. But we got it because when we had consultative ballots, such numbers were voting that we could demonstrate to the government that we had the strength of feeling behind us in the union, that we could have moved to industrial action had we chosen to. So I think it's really important that people remember that. So I think that for everybody who's listening today, I think it's really important that we go back to our colleagues, to our members, ask them to vote, make sure people are checking if they don't think they've received their ballot papers, make sure they check all their email addresses, their junk mail. If they haven't got it, go to membership, email membership, make sure they find that email that's got the code numbers in it and everything, and make sure you vote. There's still time, but honestly, we can win this. We can win this if we get the support from the membership.
And Des, would you like to add any final comments?
Really just to kind of echo what Andreen said there, in terms of making sure that every member votes, and every member, hopefully, who is watching this this evening and joining us, has voted and voted to reject. And I would urge, as Andreen says, everyone who's watching to urge their colleagues to do the same. I think if somebody doesn't have or hasn't received their ballot yet, they might check your junk mail. I think you can also email ballot@eis.org.uk with your name, address and EIS number, and headquarters will send you out a ballot email. So that's what someone should do if they find themselves in that situation. As I say, the ballot is 31st of January, it closes, but please don't wait until 31st of January to cast your vote. Do it now. If you haven't done it, do it before you start relaxing for the weekend. Just do it now. Do it as soon as possible. And that's the kind of big main message, really, one of the main messages to take away from tonight.
And all it remains for me to say is to thank the panel and appeal again. Ask your colleagues, you know, over coffee in the staff room, if you're allowed to be in the staff room, or passing in the corridor, just say, have you voted? It's really important that we get this huge reject vote, because remember, COSLA and the Scottish Government are watching this just as closely as we are, and we need to send a resounding message that we are absolutely not going to accept a huge pay cut, which is what they are proposing. And we are highly skilled, a graduate profession, and we are needed for the next generation of young people. That's what we do. That's how important we are. So please vote reject, and let's send a message that they cannot ignore. And after that, I'd just like to thank you all for attending. Thanks to Des, thanks to Andreen, and thanks to everybody who made the webinar a possibility. And I hope you all have a very pleasant good evening. Good evening.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks, everyone.